साहित्य का संबंध उतना ही पुराना है जितना स्वयं सिनेमा पुराना है। दोनों ही समाज रूपी सिक्के के दो पहलू हैं। As we move forward, let's begin our third session of the conclave themed We the People Cinema Through the Ages. Our third session will be moderated by Shri Shantanu Chaudhuri, Editor-in-Chief at Om Books International. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming him with a round of applause. Now, I have the privilege of welcoming our esteemed guests for this session. First, let us extend a warm welcome to Shri V. Vijayendra Prasad, Honorable Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, a legendary screenwriter whose storytelling has left an indelible mark on Indian cinema. It's also my honor to welcome Ms. Nirupama Kotru, a distinguished film writer and author. A huge round of applause for them, please. Also, please extend a warm welcome to Shri Prafulla Ketkar, editor of Organiser Weekly. Delighted to have you all here on Sansad TV. And now I hand over the session to our moderator.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here today. It's quite a privilege to be on this panel with stalwarts like Mr. Prasad and Mr. Ketkar, and of course Nirupama has been a co-author with me. Last year we did this book on Hindi cinema of the 70s. We co-edited it. You know, I've always believed that the moderator should be doing the least amount of talking, and particularly when we have stalwarts like these, I'd just probably do the introduction and then leave the field to them, just interjecting. And I'd like to keep this a more interactive. You don't need to wait for my questions, you know, just feel free to come in on any comment that any one of us is making. Just to give an introduction, cinema in India, and one of the aspects we'll be discussing is how it has influenced society, it has influenced the world. Today, Indian cinema is the flavor of the international circuit. You know, we hear of such huge reception the cinema of the country is having. We go back to 1947-48 when Neecha Nagar was our first featured film at the Cannes. Then we have Raj Kapoor and his influence in the Soviet Union, right up to Mithun Chakravarti, whose Jimmy Jimmy is still an anthem in the Soviet Union. We have had Satyajit Ray's Pother Pachali, even in China, you know. Yeah, and
can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Right in Delhi, we have very good actors, 540 members of parliament, and good members of Rajya Sabha. They can beat any artist,
Yeah, we'll take you up on that. And Satyajit Ray's Pother Pachali, the first film that won the Human Document Award at Cannes, and it's been a glorious journey. We'll talk about how that journey can be taken forward in the years to come at a time when Indian cinema is on the rise. We have had successes at Oscar. Mr. Prasad's film has been part of that success. I think it's phenomenal that a film from this country, and not a Hindi film. You know, we talk about the hegemony of Hindi, and given certain reasons, it is the pan-Indian film, but not being a Hindi film, resonating with audiences all over the world. It's incredible. We'll start off at someone who has been at the forefront of both the industry, the film industry in India, and a parliamentarian too. I'll start off with you, Mr. Prasad. You know, where do you see this influence of that Indian cinema is having? Where do you see it going from there? How do you, as a parliamentarian, as somebody who is involved in policy making, want to deal?
What's the first question?
Yeah.
No, what's the first question?
As someone who has been at the forefront of the industry and in parliament also, how do you see cinema in this country getting in the West?
Now, there are two questions that are independent of each other.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you why I got influenced by making movies. Because I like Mr. Gandhi very much. I adore him. Not that Gandhi who fought in the independence movement. This Gandhiji. So that's why, see, if you write a story and publish it in a magazine, how much you'll get? A few thousands. Make a book, how much you make? A few lakhs. Write a story, you make a few crores. So I love Gandhiji. So that's why I chose movies. Okay, next question.
The next question is how do we sort of...
Very un-Gandhian way of looking at cinema.
But there was nothing Gandhi, if you look at Gandhi's views on cinema, he hated cinema with a vengeance actually, he was very...
No, there was a reason. Please understand.
Yeah. Actually, that's why I want to lock him inside the box.
Yeah,
No,
please,
no.
Mr. Ketkar.
No, please stand and understand. There was a reason. See, he didn't hate the storytelling tradition.
Yeah.
India has a long storytelling tradition. No society in the world is making around 2,000 movies in a year, calendar year, and in more than 20 languages. And if you see, right from Bharat Muni's time till date,
Absolutely.
the fundamentals of our storytelling hasn't changed. Only after, last few years, we are experimenting with, something like Shah Rukh doing, Kaka Kaka Kiran kind of thing. But otherwise, generally a hero has to be a hero, not a villain. Ending has to be positive. The plot, most of us, in fact, have not read original Valmiki's Ramayana. But still everybody knows Ramayana in some form, in some language, associating with some character. Mm-hmm. That is the beauty of Indian storytelling. And that is why, themes like Bahubali are, blockbusters.
Yeah.
So, we need to understand when it started during the freedom struggle, the influence of British cinema on Indian elite was a very different kind. And that's why we need to understand the role of Dadasaheb Phalke.
Yes.
And the way he looked at cinema. I don't know how many of you have read or seen a Marathi movie called Harishchandrachi Factory.
Yeah.
I think it's a phenomenal movie, not because of the, the technical standards of the movie, but the content and the characterization of Dadasaheb Phalke. He was a very astonishing character, and it is in a way continuation of the earlier session on freedom struggle. And when we are talking about we the people, who are those we in cinema? And I don't agree with this foolish idea that cinema influence society or society influence cinema. It is a very complex process. It is not a typical Marxist kind of dialectics. The point is whether the storytelling has a social reflection, whether that we the people of Bharat is reflecting in those stories or not. What I feel post 1990s, that is frankly not happening.
It's not happening.
Not happening means in the mainstream at least, because it is very. It's not about. It is not being unrealistic about the thing. It was always there in storytelling.
Escapism of cinema has always been. I think, if anything, in the last 20-30 years, there's been a attempt at making something more like the 70s or 60s, where the song and dance cinema was very, very popular. Which is so. In that sense, do you think it is more realistic now? Is that what you're saying?
I'm in fact saying it is more unrealistic.
Okay.
Globalization and the foreign investment in cinematic or rather creation of storytelling industry. I'm not talking just about cinema. Foreign investment in suddenly somebody, earlier also, and I'm not talking in 2013 when there was 100 years of cinema and most of the people were actually talking about Bollywood. I said, in fact, Bollywood is not Indian cinema. Bombay Talkies is not Indian cinema.
Yeah.
Indian cinema started much earlier. 1913 we are talking in 2013 simply because Bombay Talkies was much later.
Yeah.
So, before Bombay Talkies was formed, there was already Prabhat Theatre, there was already Tamil film industry, there was already Telugu film industry, there was already Bengali, there was Assami, and we just don't talk about that. So, when we are talking about cinema, the real cinema is actually in all Indian languages.
Yes.
What has done with the, through globalization, on the one hand it has brought some aspects like technology, even translation and subtitling and dubbing, these things have become much easier. But frankly speaking, this unrealistic way of presenting Indian stories in some foreign setting, suddenly somebody going to Canada or somebody going to US and doing some dancing there, which I find very problematic, and because the brand that is funding it, I don't know whether it is politically correct or not, but you can edit it. But for example, Archie's. If you see, Archie's started investing in production of movies.
Yeah,
somebody will have to.
course.
Somebody will have to. But suddenly the way toy industry became an ingredient in Indian storytelling, Katputli is gone.
Can I bring Mr. Prasad?
Yeah,
Mr. Prasad,
please.
as somebody who has been part of the industry, how do you sort of see
I didn't understand a single word what he has said. I don't know anything about movies. Nothing about movies. I want to live in the present, looking into the future.
Yes, if you are looking into the future, where do you see this Indian cinema? What can be done? What can be done as a filmmaker and as a parliamentarian? What can be done to facilitate the presence of, increase the presence of Indian cinema in the West? You mentioned yesterday when we spoke briefly about how the footprints of cinema are now in Switzerland and all, and that's doing us great deal of service.
There are two aspects.
Yeah.
From the government point of view,
Yeah.
movie is a wonderful instrument to take our culture abroad. I want to tell an example. Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge was extensively shot in Switzerland. And from that day, the tourists from India to Switzerland have grown exponentially. And Korea has recognized the soft power of the movies. They started encouraging their movie industry. So the Korean movies income they are earning, and the merchandising, because of the influence of the movies, has gone several times. And India, as he said, India has a very rich culture of stories and histories. And there are several aspects the government should take care. Our history is being misrepresented again and again and again and again and again. Somebody should take the responsibility of correcting it. For example, I want to point a single thing, something. I don't know how many of you are aware. At the time of giving independence, the British asked Mahatma Gandhi, please select someone who would be the future Prime Minister to sign the papers with the British government. At that time, there were 17 PCCs, Pradesh Congress committees in India. He called all the 17 people, he explained the situation, and they said would-be Prime Minister should be highly educated, should have access to knowledge and everything. In my opinion, Mr. Nehru is the right person. But you can write your own name, whatever you think. Out of the 17 people, 15 wrote the name of Sardar Patel, one of J.B. Kripalani, one is a blind. What Mahatma Gandhi should have done at the time? He should have suggested the name of Mr. Patel. No, he didn't do it. He constituted the 18th PCC of Delhi, made Mr. Nehru as the president and asked Mr. Patel to support the name of Mr. Nehru as the Prime Minister. There's a moment that democracy is dead. But how many people know about it? It's a time our history should be corrected. The people who deserve the real, name and fame, people should recognize the greatness of it. and Prasar Bharati has a distinct role to play in it. Put money, you see, don't look at Prasar Bharati as a money making machine. It's a wonderful tool in our hands to take our history abroad.
Yeah.
Pump money. Let them make movies of such high standard where the other foreign companies also, they would like to, broadcast our movies there.
Yeah.
So that our culture grow abroad.
I'd like to bring Nirupama into this because Nirupama, you have been in administration, you have headed cultural sections in the INB ministry, you've organized the IFI and all of these bodies, government bodies. And also as an observer and commentator, right, you've written extensively on these aspects. How do you see government bodies or the government and the administration facilitating the reach of cinema? Do you think, what role should the government have in that?
Okay, before we come to the role of government, Shantanu, I want to just go back to what Ketkar ji was saying and what Sir said about a little bit of the history of Indian cinema and how it has evolved. I mean, we should all discuss it because as Ketkar ji was saying, cinema is a younger medium. Audiovisual medium is actually
Just
not very
about
old,
100
it's
or
just
20
above
years, yeah.
100. Actually, our storytelling tradition is very old, and if you go back to Natya Shastra, theatre came first, obviously. Plays came first. We had different traditions of folk theatre, as you know, starting with Ram Leela, Jatra, Yakshagan, so many. So theatre, storytelling has always been in India. So it was natural that epics, which are very popular in India, they really were the initial backbone of cinema. As Raja Harishchandra or all the other, Mahatma Gandhi, since we mentioned, the only film he actually watched and enjoyed was Ram Rajya, Vijay Bhatt's Ram Rajya, which was a huge hit at that time. So epics have been a very, very critical part of our storytelling, so much so that Sir, when he made RRR, the elements of Ramayana in it, there's Ram, Sita. So we love our epics and they will always be there. At the same time, stories keep evolving because obviously after independence, there was a lot to look forward to, there was a lot of optimism, but there was also the realization that, we have a long way to go. Which is where filmmakers like Bimal Roy, Raj Kapoor, even Mehboob Khan, they all played a very important role. As you mentioned, Neecha Nagar, which is about highlighting societal inequality. The story is very touching when, this upper class is living at an elevation.
The lower depths, it's
absolutely.
A
So it's
by
an allegory for
novelist.
inequality, and actually shown with the upper classes living at an elevated level, and the lower classes actually get all the sewage, etc. from the upper class, and they get flooded. So it's a very, very touching, very powerful story for that time. And then you had
it was a very convenient tool, as Sir said, to sell socialism.
So
Nehruvian ideas of socialism.
So, okay, we can debate that later.
No,
but
because it was a Russian setting.
Sure,
Again,
sure,
see,
I'm
who
not,
is funding, who is telling the story. It's not that we didn't have a story in the post-independent period.
Sure, so I was
but
just
certain characters and certain names were propped up because they were convenient politically. So it has happened every time and in every society.
Anyway, so to get back to which other stories we should tell, like I said, entertainment is very important. I would never, like Sir said,
we'll talk about,
because
between the
I was coming to
aspect of cinema
because,
and the educative
you
aspect
asked me
of cinema.
how and why government should, support cinema. Entertainment is very important. At the same time, I think filmmakers also have a responsibility to educate through, good messaging. Positive messaging. Again, it could be an epic which you're showing. RRR touched our hearts. We loved the story. It was something, it was in the context of the Britishers, and then, these two friends coming to very universal values. All of us loved it. And then the music and dance, which is a very integral part of our culture. Our films cannot be conceived without music. We are all musicals, all our films. So while there is space for that, at the same time, there is also importance of realistic cinema. I would not agree that we should not make films which are, not real. Yes, you can say the recent film which was much feted last year, All We Imagine As Light, it shows a very Western view of what India is. This debate can go on. So I don't want to go into who funded or what, but I feel these were important milestones. Though because Zameen was also important, because yes, Zamindari was a curse in India. It was important to show. Mother India, why I personally rate as a very important film is because it was meant to cut the narrative of Catherine Mayo, which was very disparaging about India, and it was the only film which dispelled this myth that all farming is done by men. Even today I've written about this on 50 years of completion of Mother India. If you do an internet search, 99.9% when you search farmer, you'll see male. And that is wrong, because 40 to 50% activities in the field, back-breaking work is done by women. But when you show pictures, you'll just show them with pleasant tea plucking or apple orchards, very fancy. Whereas they do back-breaking work and it's all unpaid labor. Those stories are also important. So, yes, we must entertain, but at the same time, you have to show reality. If there's inequality, if there's a Scrooge like casteism, if there were zamindari in the past, those stories also need to come out. And when I was in INB ministry up to 2015, that time, unfortunately, like he was saying that other cinema used to be called regional cinema.
Exactly.
Now it's not there.
Yeah.
We have
Hindi
far
is also a
moved
regional
out. Yeah,
language in
we
India.
don't say Hindi and regional.
No, all Indian languages are national
Exactly,
languages.
exactly.
There is
So
nothing
we
called
always
regional.
say Indian now.
All Indian languages are
Yes.
national languages.
Correct. I'm just saying
As
that-
constitution has enlisted,
Exactly.
they are national languages.
They're national languages. So
English also has to become a regional language.
English is also an Indian
That also become a
language.
regional
And we
language.
write in Indian English. So,
No, not just Indian. I write mostly Marathi English.
Sure. So that's what I'm saying. We have
And
adapted
mostly
and
we speak
adopted English.
our regional accent of English.
Exactly. So we have our own version of English, which is our own English, and we express it. So, when I was in INB, for instance, you had all these schemes for production of cinema, including children's films, which are very important because they often get neglected. Children's Society, they had Films Division, which makes documentaries. Of course, NFDC, which has been supporting cinema. It has supported even films like Attenborough's Gandhi. So these were important, but they were at a certain time and film funding was difficult to get. Even today, if you see, notionally industry is classified as an industry, but nobody will lend to a filmmaker. There are no banks willing to give you a loan. Which is why big studios came in. Now whether we can go on debating big money should come, shouldn't come. As Sir said rightly, I'm completely with him, films are also meant to make money. You cannot expect a filmmaker to starve. How will he pay his crew? There's so many people associated who get their bread and butter from a film. You employ lots of people directly and indirectly. So films have to make money. Now, I don't want to go into who funds it or studios, but our own people should be so capable that they can stand on their own feet. Government should be minimally supporting, for instance, which we do. We have film festivals, we set up India pavilions in festivals abroad like Cannes, Toronto, Berlin. I was personally also involved. We have IFFI, which is a great platform, one of the oldest, most prestigious festivals in the world, where we recognize world cinema. So the attitude and the approach of government has always been good, that you please make your films, we are not going to interfere in the content. Obviously there's a censorship body, censorship is a must, you cannot wish it away, it's a double-edged sword. It's easy to say let's not censor anything, that is not going to happen, it shouldn't happen. There are certain things, for example violence against women or children, which should not be shown beyond a point. You can suggest it, you don't have to go for gory details, So, I think the approach of government is good because it's minimal interference. You don't comment on the content. A film could be terribly content-wise. That's not the job of government to get in. You have to ensure that certain guidelines are followed and you promote and support cinema. Beyond that, I don't think, there is a space for real getting into films.
I'll come back to you, like in the context of FFCs and NFDCs.
Sure.
Mr. Ketkar, what's your take on, at one point of time, some of what we call the best of Indian cinema, and I'm not talking just Hindi cinema, a lot of language cinema, some of the best works of, say, Adur or Girish Kasaravali came out of NFDC's efforts. are we still there in terms of that, or do you think that's a model that could be sustained or that should be carried out, extended? Should the government be involved in that aspect of facilitating a certain kind of cinema? Because studios will, big money, because you talked about funding, big money will always support blockbuster big cinema, but there's a place for the personal intimate cinema also. Where do you see this debate? How do you see this debate?
Who supported Ram Leela when Tulsi started it? No, why I'm asking this? Because Prabhat Theatre was exactly the same story in Maharashtra.
Okay.
When Prabhat Theatre started and Bhalji Pendarkar and all these people were making movies on Shivaji and Ram, they were nothing less than blockbusters.
Yeah, absolutely.
But still they were telling Indian story. I have no issues ideologically whether somebody is selling. See, there will be always three kinds of settings. One, which is government supported and government promoted. I'm fine with that. There will be another which will be more a kind of amateur, enthusiastic, I'm doing it for the sake. And there will be third category, which is more related to society. Society is part of it. It is a social responsibility and it's a business. I'm looking at it. No, again, I have no issues with all the three models. The point is, what has happened in 60s, 70s, that political ideology of the establishment has become the prime objective of the so-called mainstream. And because of that, we lost the real setting. For example, she talked about Mother India. But besides Mother India, still the popular narrative is and has been about the role of women in Indian society. And we have such powerful characters. Like 300 years of Ahilyabai Holkar we are celebrating. But nobody is trying to even touch one of the best governance models in terms of water management and revenue management and protection of all Jyotirlingas has been Ahilyabai. Kashi's Assi Ghat is Ahilyabai. Somnath saving is Ahilyabai. And still Ahilyabai is not a story for us to tell. Abakka.
Where do you see, whose lacuna is this? Where does, how would you facilitate if you were to, so let's say if this is a story that needs to be told, how would you go about suggesting that somebody take this up? Because as you said, for some it will be a commercial venture. They'll say, okay, mujhe isme revenues kya dikhte hain, this will be a grand thing, this will be an epical scale, will I be able to, or should the government then get involved in it, so how do you see that?
See, there will be something like, as you said, NDFC kind of model where, certain documentary format or certain characters. Means, I just gave an example of Ahilyabai.
Absolutely.
But there is another example. For example, I did for Prasar Bharati and Doordarshan on 75 characters of freedom fighters during Swaraj. The serial itself was Swaraj. Nobody talks about Abakka. Nobody talks about Velu Nachiyar. These are the queens who actually won wars against the European colonizers. And still, even if you want to, promote feminism, why do you need some European or American character to promote feminism? That is my point. So you need so as Sir said, though he started by saying that I want to be present and I want to talk about future, inadvertently he went into history. When he spoke about the, what happened in the Congress session. Simply because unless we decolonize why Ramanand Sagar's Ramayana was so popular? Means technically speaking, in technical terms, it may not be that great kind of presentation.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yes.
Honorable Minister Nirmala Sitharaman should cooperate. She should open the purse first.
So,
I'm telling the practical things.
Oh, yes, yes.
The practical thing.
Yes.
I'm thinking two aspects. I had the good opportunity of meeting Modi ji some time back. He was feeling bad why our tourist spots are not being developed on par with Agra, Taj Mahal. I have a solution. Let each state identify, already tourism department, they have 50 hidden jewels, they have identified spots. They give an offer to the movie people, make a movie where the spot is an integral part of the story. At least 60 to 70% should be shot there. And then what is the incentive? What all the GST it collects, give it back to the producer. Because the GST comes both from state and center. The state and the center both will be helped because of the tourism that is going to be come out of it.
Basically, make an interlaken kind of
Yeah.
thing in India.
Give an
We did
incentive.
that with
Give
Kashmir.
an incentive.
Yeah.
Because the
We
bigger
did
the
that with
movie,
Kashmir at one point.
the bigger the movie, the bigger the purse for him. If the picture files, government has nothing to lose.
Yeah.
When the pictures hit, automatically tourism will develop. That's one aspect. You understand, sir?
Yeah, yeah.
Second thing, whichever movie that makes money is we have two markets, international market movies, traditional and non-traditional. Traditional market is where they speak English, Canada, America, Australia, New Zealand, Middle East, etc. Non-traditional is Europe, South America, Russia, China, etc. Whatever the money the movie makes from non-traditional areas, exempt the entire income from income tax for 10 years. Because there is only hypothetical income. It is not real income for the government. And then the moment of movies start playing there, they will start getting interested in culture. The tourism will grow up. The merchandise from our country will go up like anything. Let them do these two incentives. This is how the movies can help our country. And as you rightly said, what I feel is there should be a message in the movies. It should promote national integrity, humanism, everything, but it should be like a homeopathic medicine, not an allopathic medicine. It should be sweet, but it doesn't work. This is my take.
One of the aspects that I think, I may be wrong in that, but I'd like to put it out there, is that at one point of time we had big stalwarts like who were making waves in international cinema with very, very basic Indian content. The films of Satyajit Ray or Adur Gopala Krishnan or Shyam Benegal. These are films totally rooted in the Indian reality, in the Indian milieu, in the Indian tradition. Yeah.
What's the first line you said?
Satyajit
What's the first
Ray.
line in yours? This thing. The first line. At some time you were telling.
Satyajit Ray.
No, the beginning, the first line. Some time back.
Sometime.
How you started this?
Some time back, yeah.
Only last year you got the Oscar award.
Yes,
Why are you
of
talking
course.
sometime back?
But what my point was, like
No, it doesn't carry any weight. we are very much in the foreign market. You see, with Spielberg and James Cameron, they want to work with our directors.
Yeah.
What else you want?
yeah,
Did we get any offer
that's-
previously?
No, so that's what I was coming.
No. Talk to the present. Why you talk about Satyajit Ray? I have got every respect for him. He is no more relevant now.
My question was that kind of cinema which did not need the big studio intervention involvement and all. Are we looking at that sort of thing, or is that passé? Is that something that belongs to the past and no longer to be sort of?
No, I don't think so. See, now the mediums, you have many platforms now to create that kind of content. People will always look for some kind of avenues. Now OTT platforms have, given a new kind of option. Even basic social media things are giving, more realistic content. So I don't think that the approach and the sir, I have no issues that government must invest, government must promote, but government must do everything is very un-Indian approach. Most of the movies done in 1920s and 1930s were supported by the society. If you are able to sell the idea, the best, I always give the example of dam, because they are the most disputed thing.
When you say supported by society, you mean like in what sense?
It is through social contributions, means the rich people, the common people contributed in movie making. Like they contributed in journalism, they contributed in movie making that our heroes are coming on the screen. So they had the confidence, and they had, some of the investors had a confidence of even getting returns. So we should look for them. But if your idea of, the story idea is convincing, people will come. People will come to invest. But government must do, see, state will be always indulging, state will have a different role to play while making a movie or investing in a movie or promoting in a movie. What, as Vinoba Bhave used to say, one of the Gandhians, in India, whatever is, and perhaps these people, most of the people sitting here would not like this, but whatever is asarkari is only asarkari. Non-governmental is more impactful and acceptable in Indian society. Where it comes from, what Tagore calls as the Swadeshi Samaj. Why should we give everything, the state should do everything is basically colonialism. Society is owning and controlling everything. So our forms of telling a story has multiple, and that's why I have no problem with soft toys. I have problem with Katputlis going out. Katputli is not going out. The character of Katputli player is also going out. That social connect is also going out. If we are not, and that's why the funding question becomes very important. Who is promoting that product? As cultural tourist place is a product, similarly a soft toy is a product. So who is promoting that against that investment, and for what? Against what? These questions are important for me. Interestingly, many people here may not be knowing. I have nothing to do with films. I'm basically an editor of Organiser, so mainly a political thing. But I stumble upon this political, rather journalism and movie reviews thanks to Advaniji. When I was doing this particular edition, I had a very long conversation with him on cinema. And when he started his career as a reporter in Organiser, he started as a film critic. And it was then the legendary K.R. Malkani who suggested, anyway, you keep watching movies and your English is quite good, so why don't you give us a comparative perspective? So he used to write two columns in Organiser. One was called Netra and the other was called Periscope. So the kind of insight he used to give about the Hollywood movies and the Indian movies are exemplary. I'm planning to put them together. It's very interesting simply because on the one hand, in some column related to Periscope, he's dealing with a Hollywood movie and a Cold War setting and the geostrategic context of it, of that movie. And in other, somewhere he is talking about how this particular movie, taking inspiration from India's freedom struggle, is recontextualizing the present problem for the post-independent India. So that's why, that's how we should be able to, means learning good things from outside again is not a problem. The problem is when you start imitating and start considering that this is the only way, this is the great way, this is the only sellable idea. My point is, good theatres should be supported. Ultimately, one of the reasons why those movies were more rooted, because there was a great connection between our theatre personalities and our cinema makers. So filmmakers used to be connected with the theatre personalities and theatre personalities used to act in cinemas. So they were more grounded with the, see, cinema persons are, there on the screen. They act, they interact with the people only as a celebrity. But theatre person has to get the feedback with the eyes, with the reactions, with the pat, with the criticism, whatever it is, even abuses, but right there on the stage. So you have a more connect with what audience is thinking about this particular plot, this particular character, and then your cinema become more realistic.
Nirupama, just getting you into the context, into the debate on, independently produced cinema. You know that I get a lot of since I write a lot on cinema. There are a lot of filmmakers who come to me. They spend months and months with on ideas that are relevant, good ideas. You know, but they don't get the funding. You know, so how do you, as somebody who's lived in this ecosystem of film production, distribution, policy making, how would you facilitate? Because those stories also need to be told. For example, I'll just give you one example. There's this.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
If he knows how to get fund, he would be making movies. He will not be sitting on the stage.
I know, but you know.
Yeah. So, Shantanu, in fact, all the schemes of INB ministry, even today, are meant to facilitate independent cinema. They're not meant for the big studios, honestly. So, even if NFDC, the Film Bazaar, which they've been doing for years, and it's a very successful part, parallel to IFI, there's a screenwriting lab where they nurture stories, So actually from that screenwriting lab, a lot of good films have gone into production and later done very well internationally, like Lunchbox.
Yeah.
Right? Brilliant movie, we all know. It was loved. Very Indian story. But just to come back to what you were mentioning about, why Indian stories rooted in India are not being made. And Ketkar ji was mentioning that in 20s and 30s society was involved. So one of the most brilliant examples of society being involved is Manthan. But you needed a director of the vision of Shyam Benegal to actually approach the Gujarat farmers and say, please give me just 15 rupees or 5 rupees or 2 rupees.
5 lakh farmers
2 rupees.
putting.
And imagine all the farmers coming together and funding. What a nice movie, because it was about the white revolution in India. So, but you need that kind of, filmmaker with that passion and that vision to actually go and sell this story, which is such an Indian story. And where storytelling is concerned, I think modern concerns are also important, which is something I think in our book, as you know very well, in 70s, a lot of filmmakers like Rishikesh Mukherjee, Basu Chatterjee, the films they made were so relevant. I again find them very relevant because my perspective is also that of a woman. So for instance, when Basu Chatterjee made Rajnigandha, which was based on Manu Bhandari's story Yahi Sach Hai, very important because that same thing was earlier covered by Satyajit Ray in Mahanagar. But when a woman steps out, into the world, starts working, what are the challenges she faces? So in Rajnigandha also, it's the woman who's the protagonist, and the choices she has to make between taking up a job and maintaining status quo, or going to a different place where she might have different challenges, personal, etc. I feel those were also very important and modern ideas which were very much rooted in Indian society, because you have to show this churning of society, especially where gender roles are concerned, inequality is concerned. And there I think Malayalam cinema has taken a lead because the kind of different themes they make, they're very fresh. For instance, related to theatre, there's a very good film called Atom. I don't know, you might have seen it, and also refers to gender equality and sexual harassment. So I think those are Indian stories, but we need them in all languages. Luckily, those can be made with less money. Although there is, as sir was saying, there is a scheme for promoting best film-friendly states. They get incentives. So film shooting incentives.
Which I'd like to close. My final question before anybody has any questions. Mr. Ketkar, you brought up the aspect of various forums now available, like the OTT platforms, but how do you see, because most of the things that we hear about Netflix or an Amazon involvement is they are also going the big star, and they have I need a dark story, an erotic thriller, and there's a certain cast in stone genre that they are dictating. So how do you see them facilitating, or how do you see the involvement of platforms other than theatres facilitating cinema? One comment from...
See, we need to accept and understand, though we like to be politically correct, we need to understand that filmmaking is a great part in last 60-70 years has been of selling your soft power. And in Cold War period, both the superpowers did that.
Did that,
Now
yeah.
China is doing it. Now we are also into it. So we need to sell India's story very convincingly, and we need a conscious strategy for it. And each platform will have its advantages and disadvantages. OTTs, especially the Netflix like, they will always have their own biases and their own patterns. So they will more be conscious about diversity and inclusivity debates that are going on there. So we need to bring in our issues. So I believe that eventually there will be more competitive platforms to even platforms like Netflix. There are many people who are trying in India also. Outside India also, in other languages, there are multiple platforms coming. And there will be more a sort of democratization of this technology. It is not a, earlier there was a dominant stories that we used to see. I mean, Dadasaheb Phalke, when he went to see first movie, I believe it was on
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ. So that was the first time he clicked with this idea, if this can work with the Bible or Jesus Christ related stories, why can't it work with Ramayana or Mahabharata or Harishchandra? And that's how he's, out of 129 movies that he made, 107 were on Indian epics and Puranas. So, and still Dadasaheb Phalke was a successful filmmaker. So, we need, these are just platforms. Those platforms will change. Ultimately, what is the purpose behind that? One is profit making, second is entertainment. Besides that, are we really ready to tell Indian story from Indian point of view? Modernity is not an issue. The question is, are we addressing and dealing with the modernity question from the Indian point of view, or we are just importing the Western prism to understand them? That is the point. And there somewhere I think we need to decolonize the entire debate on movie making and the intellectual basis of it. That is my primary emphasis has been.
Mr. Prasad, your take on this OTT platform, if, how do you see them as part of this process of facilitating Indian cinema, the growth of cinema?
The question is, the OTT platform has nothing to do with promoting Indian cinema, not promoting Indian cinema. It promotes good cinema, that's all.
Okay.
It doesn't have any relevance for your question.
Oh.
Shantanu, I think when in 70s, 80s rather, we saw the decline of commercial cinema, especially in Hindi. That time Doordarshan had filled a very important gap, and we had very good serials towards late 80s, 90s, like Hon'ble, Bunyad. People like Manoj Joshi were involved writing scripts. Now, after the channel boom in 90s, I think the Gulf War was the first televised war, and we got so many channels in India, I remember. The quality suddenly declined. I think OTT is really filling that gap in our lives, which at one time only Doordarshan and some of the good channels were. But as has been rightly said, that a lot of the content is driven by Western ideas of, what is acceptable in terms of language and violence, which is not always desirable. I mean, I'm not saying it shouldn't be there. But as water finds its own level, you will see that there will be audiences which will select better content. We have some nice web series like Panchayat, which is so beautiful. It's about local democracy in India. Very important and very nice way of educating people about how democracy works at Panchayat level. You have Gullak, a very sweet story. It's more or less like Wagle Ki Duniya or Malgudi Days. It's reminiscent of that. So hopefully OTT will evolve and in India give us better content. A lot of it is film dominated. They're making good film banks. I'm happy because during COVID a lot of us watched so many films. So you have great films with subtitles. I have been catching up on films in Malayalam, Bengali, all languages. Thanks to the data banks of Amazon and Netflix, we have a great selection of films now, which all of us can understand. The language barrier has been broken.
Yeah.
That's an important contribution of OTT, and I think
Prasad Bharati is now
Of course,
on
and,
OTT thing,
their
so
archive is
there will be
excellent.
more competition, and I believe it
Yes.
will be more
Wave
democratized.
is come.
Because
Wave is
ultimately
come,
it is a
yes.
distribution channel. It itself is not a making channel.
Yeah.
So the channels will change.
So yeah, OTT platform Prasar Bharati's Wave is there. There's so much content which we'd love to go back to. All the great serials of Doordarshan. Hopefully, good filmmakers will get a chance to make good content, and the star-driven system will no longer be there in OTT.
Praveen Chaturvedi is now doing this, who started this YouTube channel called Prachyam. He is coming up with this OTT platform. Now he makes a wonderful content on Indian civilizational stories. So there will be many who will be
Hopefully.
On that note, hopeful note, I don't think we have time for audience questions, but thank you, Mr. Prasad. Was delighted to have you tell me what's relevant to a discussion. That's absolutely love that. Mr. Ketkar, thank you so much for such valuable insights. And Nirupama, lovely to be interacting with you after that wonderful success of our 70s book. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Round of applause for them, please. A heartful thank you to our guests for this enriching discussion. And may I now request Shri Surender Paliwal, CTO Sansad TV, to kindly present a memento to our honored guests as a token of appreciation. Shri Prafulla Ketkar. Miss Nirupama Kotru. Shri V. Vijayendra Prasad.
But on the dais, I spoke the truth. Only I got a small shout. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Shri Shantanu Chaudhuri, our moderator for this session.
संसद टीवी के और भी प्रोग्राम्स देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें हमारा यूट्यूब चैनल और हाँ, इन्हें लाइक और शेयर करना ना भूलें।